I just wanted to say a couple of words, and that is to thank Kath, who has been leading on this area of work. And thank you, Simon, for coming tonight. Do you want to come and join us? Now, we're going to do something slightly different, if you could bear with us. Before we get deep dive into the strategy and hear from Simon, we were going to take Kath, really, because she's got quite an interesting book, and she's going to read from this short book on Asperger's, and I think that will help us start thinking and focus our mind on the subject in hand. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Kath. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. This book was recommended to me on Facebook, a site which is for Asperger's parents. And somebody said, you must get this book because it's called All Cats Have Asperger's Syndrome. I got this book and I showed it to my daughter, and she has carried it round in her bag with her every day since about 6 months ago, since I got it. And she shows it to her helpers at the Bosco Centre and said, this is about me. So it's a very insightful view of Asperger's syndrome, or autism generally, and because I felt the strategy is quite dark and quite heavy and doesn't humanise people with autism at all, it treats them as a group. I wanted to just show you this book and read a little. Oh, we'll see how far we get. So the first signs of Asperger's syndrome are usually picked up very young.
So you picking some on camera as well?
An Asperger's child looks at the world in his own unique way. He likes to be near those he loves, but doesn't want them to hold him. Preferring squishy places to a hug, instead of coming to people for comfort, he may be overly attached to a toy or a pet. It's possible he is extra adventurous with no sense of danger, and he uses up some of his 9 lives too quickly. An Asperger's child has exceptionally good hearing, and loud sounds and sudden movements will scare him. His other senses can be heightened too, such as touch and smell. Yet things that bother other people may not bother him at all. He's often fussy about what he eats and wants the same food presented in the same way day after day. He isn't interested in the things other kids his age do, and when he's forced to mix, he doesn't know how. Other kids make friends, but don't invite him to play, and he may be bullied. Sometimes his parents feel sad, wondering why they can't understand their own child, and they can become very protective. The Asperger's child may feel sad too, and he may become a loner, caught up in a world of his own, where small things fascinate him for hours, and he can do the same thing over and over again without getting bored. When things get too much for him, he may tantrum. Sometimes his relatives think they could bring him up better than his parents can. His vocabulary may be very advanced, but then he gets little words all mixed up or misunderstands what people say. When people talk to him, he may refuse to look at them. Yet when he talks, he goes on and on about the same topic and bores everyone silly. Then he says something that makes them stop and think, and they marvel at his bright, intelligent mind. In many ways, his thinking is far ahead of his peers, and he seeks answers in places others don't think to look, or invents new ways to do old things. People may be astounded by how far he is prepared to go to test his latest theory, and some will say he's a little genius. Daily rituals comfort him, and he likes a good routine, and gets worried if the schedule is changed. Often an Asperger's child has a great sense of humour, but he doesn't always think about what he is saying. And those around him may cringe with embarrassment. And he's honest, which is great, of course, but sometimes he's too honest. Yet when he tries to tell a lie, he's not very good at it. An Asperger's child may be very open to all people, regardless of age or size or species. And he may choose friends others wouldn't have thought he would like. But as he grows older, he sees that he is different from everyone else and feels as if he belongs on a different planet. Like an outsider looking into a world he never truly understands. Yet, with his unique perspective on life, his eye for detail, and his amazing powers of concentration, many an Asperger's child has reached the top of his chosen field. Sure, he may need a little help for following fashion trends, but don't forget, everyone is different in his own way, and there is a little bit of Asperger's in us all. So an Asperger's child is just like any other child. He needs love and encouragement, the occasional bit of advice, space to be himself, and then everyone can sit back and enjoy the unique individual he becomes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
I hope that really sort of humanises what we're talking about.
It certainly does, and it's so beautifully illustrated as well. But thank you for that. Right, so that segues nicely over to you. Sorry to do that to you, Simon, but it's just to get us thinking, about this issue. Now we move on to a much more denser document now, and over to you. Thank you. The autism strategy.
Yeah, my understanding is that this was presented on the 30th of June to Scrutiny, and to give you some time to read it and digest it. It's now gone out for consultation, which started on the 31st of July until the 23rd of October. It's online, the consultation, and it's also, there's going to be a venue, an event for people to go, an actual meeting, which is, I think the recommendation was also to be in the evening, so there's also evening meeting from 6 to 7:30, open to everybody. So at the moment we're holding a consultation to get feedback from a variety of people. It's open to all within Southwark, people that are known to have autism, family, friends, people that are not engaged in services, so it is open to all. And as I said, it can be, you can write in, you can phone in, you can do it online, or you can go to the meeting with regards to it. Obviously, because it's out for consultation, we don't know what the final document will be, but the strategy has been written as a draft, and now we're asking for feedback with regards to it.
Okay, thank you. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. Right, thank you. I mean, the one thing that I would say is that thank you so much for coming tonight. I mean, I was a little bit disappointed that, you know, Peter, Jay, and I know that our lead member can't come, and she's, you know, got another engagement. But we would like to see. I think we've already emailed them. Have we emailed them?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, no. But I've left a message on Jay's phone that we would like to see them all in November. So by the November meeting, because the October would be slightly too earlier for when you've got all the consultation in. So we would like to see really how the documents changed through the consultation and, you know, how it's being communicated. So just to put that marker. But, you know, that doesn't stop us from now, you know, giving some of our points. And we will, as a committee, because we've seen this twice now, we can formalise our points. So obviously we've got the live recording and we will take our minutes. But I think we are going to do a formal, you know, scrutiny contribution to the committee. No, good. So hopefully that will add value. Okay, so I'm going to...
May I just ask, you know, you said in the note, do you know what date will be the November meeting?
Well, the system was down, so I couldn't actually check. And I did also want to check the cabinet cover report because that had the timelines. Do you recall the timelines for the strategy?
I believe so. Peter's got those, and I couldn't get into the system either today. I'm just mindful that the end of the consultation is quite late on October the 23rd, and depending how many comments there are, it could take some time to get those to the more of a final end of a consultation. So I don't know if you want it, you know, if you ask them too early in November, they may be still collating that information.
The problem is that if we go too late, it will have been to cabinet. Do you know what I mean? And then we can't add value.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean? So that's the problem.
After the meeting, I could liaise with you and Jay and Jasmine and work out the best time to come back again.
Yeah.
Does that sound sensible?
Just think it's sensible to have enough time. I'm not saying it's too late, but enough time that they can get enough comments and things. Otherwise, if it's very early November, I'm just mindful they're just collating it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so thank you for that. So what we'll do then now is I'll open it up and for questions. I mean, presumably everyone's had a chance to reread it. Yeah, okay, well, without further ado, I'll open it up for questions. Kath, did you want to say, or do you want to wait?
Oh, I'll go at the end.
Yeah, okay, you got the end. Charlie, have you got anything?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you, Simon, for coming. You've got a consultation tomorrow at Cambridge House. You've got 4 sessions. Would you, I mean, you had to book them up to get on to one of these sessions. Would you happen to know at this stage how many people have booked, how many people are coming?
I'm really sorry, no, because the systems are down. I was going to check everything today. We just don't have access to any of our systems at the moment.
All right, okay.
And my understanding that they are being quite well presented. Also, if they are completely fully booked, then we will need to do more sessions. That's the thing that we need to ensure that if people can't get in, well, A, there will be flexibility, I suppose, is the first thing. And 2, if we're saying no to people, we need to ensure that they do have a time. So that we are addressing that if that does arise.
That'd be great if you could, because a Thursday, no, what's tomorrow? Wednesday, isn't it? No, Wednesday. You know, midweek, maybe a Saturday might have been an alternative as well, which meant more people could come. We don't want to, you know, exclude anybody. You know.
No, at the beginning of the week there was still space available on all of them, was my understanding. I was going to check today before this, but I just couldn't get into the system.
But would you be able to put another day on, maybe?
But if it's needed, if people are saying that we can't get there or anything, then we do need to look into that. My understanding is that we will be flexible with regards to that. Yeah.
Okay. And similarly with the venue at Cambridge House, would you have anywhere else, maybe in the south of the borough, that you could use, you know?
My understanding, they looked at it and they wanted one in the south and perhaps one right in the north, around Rotherhithe. They had to be pragmatic about it, and it is about being pragmatic with regards to resources. We don't have a great deal of resources. We have enough to do this consultation. We had to be pragmatic about it. So we did look into it. Some venues in certain parts were going to cost thousands and thousands for a whole day. So we want to be pragmatic about it as well. And what we did say is if people couldn't get there, we were going to listen to that and think what else we could do to be flexible. We did get advice with it, and we are knowing that we're meeting, what we need to do. However, if people can't get there or it's full, we know that we need to do something else. But that's what we need to look into following when they've telephoned, emailed, etc., to see what other people feel that they need and that we may not have addressed. But my understanding, come Monday, everything was being addressed. It's now Wednesday, so.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, Chair. Considering the importance of the strategic importance of the further and higher education institutions, how have they been engaged in the overall consultation process?
The document has gone through a whole load of professions. It's gone to other professions. It's gone from health to social care for people with autism to people that care for people with autism. Obviously, we can't get everybody when you circulate a document, but we get quite a broad amount of people. The idea now is it's open to consultation, is that now it's open to everybody to actually comment on the consultation. So we have circulated it widely, we've circulated it to groups. It's now with this day for people to attend, it's also online, as well as people can phone and write. So we're doing all the channels of communication for people to get back to us, and we've also tried to communicate it for those stakeholders that we're aware of, as well as family and other people that we know are connected to, that may want to comment on it. And that was completing to do the document that we have now, but also to ensure that they know about how to comment on it.
Can you please expatiate on how exactly further and higher education have been engaged in this process?
I'm really sorry, I don't have the exact details, or I was told that they did communicate this with other stakeholders, including education.
I mean, that's quite, well, they're all important points, but the Scrutiny Committee are quite interested across the board, not just with, people with autism or children with autism, about the transitions.
Sure.
So, we've got this great education offer, finally, and then what's happening after. So obviously, the higher education, further education offer, is going to be really, really important,
Definitely.
I think, in that transitions. Because we've been trying to, when I say we, I don't just single you out, it's us, but actually, nationally, we've been trying to get it right.
Sure.
We've been failing all the time. So that, we would expect really good consultation with higher education, further education, on one word.
What I am aware of is that at the moment, as I'm sure yourselves know, that we have a 14 to 25-year-old transition service.
Yeah.
We're actually going out to look at having a 0 to 25 transition service.
Right.
So we've got independent people coming in to look at that, which is NDTI, who's looking at a pathway and scoping out a 0 to 25-year-old service. With that, we've got a whole load of stakeholders again involved in that, but also we do need to ensure that we go out to even more broadly, and we will be consulting on that as well. So what we do want to do is make sure that we have a good pathway with regards to a 0 to 25 pathway for everybody that meets that criteria, i.e. transitions to all disabilities from 0 to 25.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. We certainly want to look at that.
But we are looking at that, we're addressing that, and we need, it's just at the beginning stages, because at the moment, all we have at the moment is a 14 to 25, which is still good, but we know that there may be a need to expand that further.
Yeah, that just sounds really great. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, can I just ask you what plans do we have for independent living transition?
What do you mean? What people live in there? There's a whole variety of services that we offer people. Some people still want to remain living with their family. Some people want to live in more general housing with adaptations or telecare. Some people want to live in more supported accommodation, so there's a range of supported accommodation. And some people that have higher needs need more of a robust package, whether that's still in more independent living and lots of care going in, or more of a traditional kind of residential setting. What we're trying to do, because of whether it be Winterbourne or other reviews that have taken place, is that we want people to be as independent as possible, for them to take their own choice and control themselves, but obviously understanding that they do have needs that we may need to meet, and therefore there's a variety of things that we offer for people, whether that's peer support, whether that's some kind of befriending, whether that's home care, whether it's more specialist care, whether that's more therapists. So there's a whole range of support services that can either go into their home or they can attend things to ensure that they get the right support so they can live as independently as possible.
Do we have anything in place when they're transitioning between living with parents to independent living? Would we have anything to help them? Are there any trainings that will be given?
Yeah, there's a variety of things, not only for them with regards to living, but also their education, with regards to training, as well as them getting into employment. So there's a whole range of training and support services and advice and other things that we offer for people, so the transition is as smooth as possible as it can be, going through those transitional periods, which we know is most difficult when it's 14 going up to sort of 25, but we actually don't even want that transition. We want to look at that to actually make sure it's the 0 to 25, which we feel could be a much better offer that we are available to people. So the whole package that we can offer, for want of a better word, is to look at all of their needs. So education, but employment, independent living, and other things that we're looking at is shared lives. So sometimes it's about living with another family, and that's been very successful for people with learning disabilities and autism, as well as with people with mental health issues. So we're looking at a whole range of services that we can offer people.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, haven't you, that question, because it's all in there, isn't it? But there's very little about how you carry that out. You know, you've got the lists, you know, almost, we've got the lists in place, and you know, they're right across the council, aren't they? Employment, training, but it's not, you know, the steps on how you help people to live independently, because obviously jobs are important to that, but holistically it doesn't seem to be in here, so we'll look forward to seeing that in the final draft.
Indeed, I think that a strategy is quite broad sometimes, to get a whole load of things to think what is it that people need. It doesn't always make it operational, because it's a strategy, it's quite often a vision. And I think there are lots of things already in place, but it hasn't actually specifically being linked to an autism strategy. So I think it's getting that vision, that strategy first, and then what we need to do is have operational work streams following that to ensure that every pathway is as good as it possibly can be for that individual. And obviously an individual may cross over several pathways and several topics and several needs, depending on what they need. So it could be about education for training, but also more practical things about living at home and budget management. So there's a whole range of things that need to be covered. And that is then when you break it down that you need to get those care pathways. And I think what we've tried to do is have an overarching strategy. We do have operational things, but I suppose say they're not specific for autism. It's quite often for either for learning disabilities that may have autism. It may be that yes, there are people with autism and we've done a best fit, and that yes, it is meeting their needs, but I think what we're saying is actually we want an autism strategy and have clearer pathways, which I think the strategy talks about, clearer care pathways for people with autism. Yeah. And I think that's the next stage.
Yeah, I hope so, because that's clear. But the thing is, if you don't, it is almost like a wasted opportunity if you don't make it explicit, because, you know, we want to break silos between all the services, but then, you know, if it's going to be fit for purpose, I would assume, and I think that's the point that you always get at, that you have to be explicit, otherwise no one knows what on earth we're going on about. Do you see what I mean?
I do.
Yeah, it's interesting.
When I read it, it feels like there are two things in this: collect data, train staff, and that covers most of what's in here. And it doesn't really go far enough to explain how each person will navigate through the strategy, or through to independent living.
Okay, I've seen two people now. So, no, yeah, can you just
Yeah,
wait?
yeah, just-
no,
okay,
not you.
okay.
Sorry, sorry, Sunny. I've seen.
Thank you.
And then
Yeah, a
Lisa,
very
sorry.
interesting document. I just have a couple of questions. Clearly, education from during nursery and primary education is absolutely critical. And if we are to upskill teachers, teaching assistants, and enable the SENCOs to actually manage the process in the schools, it will be critical, it seems to me, and I can't see it in your document, to get feedback in order to identify the needs that all of the people involved in educating the children do have in terms of their CPD. And I wondered whether you had focused on the SENCOs and the head teachers in the local Southwark schools in order to gather where there is best practice.
My understanding that we have worked with schools and head teachers with regards to the strategy, as well as how we actually ensure that people are diagnosed at a very early stage. And I totally agree, getting it earlier on is much more helpful than later on. Unfortunately, a lot of people with autism aren't diagnosed at an early stage, and if they're not, that could be very unhelpful. Not only did they not get the support, but when they get older, they could be quite often misdiagnosed
So
because they believe there's behavioural problems not related to that.
So you're underlying my point.
Indeed.
Really.
So we know that that is a huge thing that we need to do.
Yes.
And
So
I'm sorry if it's not clear. I thought the diagnostic
well,
bit was when I read
well,
it, but it may
is,
not be. If it's not, we need to address that.
I think it's thin, and I think the whole good practice from page 38 doesn't mention the good practice in Southwark schools. Now, I know there is good practice in Southwark schools, but I just wonder how you're getting the feedback into your consultation about the existing good practice. Because it doesn't seem to me, having read the document, that you quote anybody in Southwark.
Right, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, yes.
And there is good practice, and there's good practice. You work with Lambeth, there's also good practice in Lambeth, and they're currently undertaking a review of all their special educational needs service. So it would seem to me a bit of joined up local rather than going national would be helpful. The other thing that's possibly important is to say, how had you anticipated you were going to sustain all the recommendations that come out of this, particularly, as Kath said, for the training, and not only the training CPD for teachers and teaching assistants and head teachers, everybody actually, and governors. It would seem important that there are resources that go into this, and I know that there are resources having been identified. Resources have been identified, but it is absolutely critical that the CPD and the feedback, and I can't see that there is a consultation document for professionals, educational professionals at whatever level, 0 to 25. I can't see this is a document, this consultation document, actually meets their needs, the needs of the professionals. It doesn't seem to me you could get the feedback from this document from those people. And I wondered if I'd missed something, or that you were sending out another questionnaire to educational institutions.
I'll be totally honest with you, I'm not too sure, but I'll look into that and find out what they are doing with regards to professional feedback. My understanding is that they are asking for professional feedback. I know the meeting in the Cambridge House, there's a specific time for professionals to give feedback. So I'm assuming that there is a separate kind of thing, not just the meeting, but also with regards to the consultation, which is for everyone to.
Yeah, I had one more question. What number is your? Do you anticipate maximum number you anticipate during the consultation day for each group?
I'm not too sure actually. It is a big venue, and I know other things other events that have been held there can take about 50 people per session.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, with all due respect, in a borough the size of Southwark, this is not, I'm not meaning to be destructive in this comment.
Sure.
50 people for each of those groups is not very many.
And that's why we're monitoring. On Monday it hadn't been filled, and I'm not saying that it won't be when they're starting, but my understanding, if they are, then we need to look at that.
Yeah.
And you've circulated obviously to all educational institutions, so everybody knows about it.
Is my understanding.
Yeah.
Lynette, thank you for that point.
Sorry.
Can I just make a suggestion? We've got quite a good working relationship with the head teachers executive of Southwark. So if there's anything that we can do, via myself or Julie, to talk to the people who run it, to maybe get another survey, a quick survey out, because they've done it for us in the past. So, that might be helpful to you.
Okay, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And I did email Mickey Kelly, the head of Redriff School, who has an autism unit in his school, and he knew nothing about it.
Okay.
So obviously you'd want to get him involved.
Peter and ensure that they are getting that.
Yep, and any help we can give to chivvy them along, just let us know. Okay, I've got Lisa now, the only person not spoken. So
thanks, Jasmine. My question is about the consultation, the document that's in the back of our packs. And when I look at the strategy, I mean, it's very dry and it's very kind of systems based, but actually the people who are going to be coming to the consultation, their experience of autism is much more in line with the book that Kath just read to us. It's very personal. It's children and people in our families that we're talking about.
Sure.
And I think it's quite difficult to get a feel for what services are going to be on offer or what's going to happen as a result of the strategy from reading the strategy. And the questions that you're asking, well, I appreciate you can't ask everything, but you don't actually ask, what do you think of the recommended actions, and are these right, and are these along the lines of what you want us to do or what your family needs? And they're very specific about what help people think they might need in the future. But I think what is missing is a very open question about what they think of the actual strategy, because the questions you're asking relate to it, but they're not. You're not actually saying, is this right? Is this going to be helpful to you? And I wonder if it's possible to just add in something, or just have something open so that when you're in discussion with people, because I imagine each of them will have something in their minds that they're bringing to it and want to take away from it that may be in here somewhere in the minutiae or may not. But I think it's vital that they have an opportunity to say that.
Just on 49, I'm not saying that answered your question fully, but there is something that you say, what do you think about our strategy, what you like, what you don't like, what you're not sure about.
Page 49.
Page 49.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Which is quite open, but I'm not saying it's going to hit it all. I do take your comments, and I will feed that back to Peter to see what else.
I just think it's quite tough to interpret what this will mean in reality when you're the parent or when you're the person who has autism.
Very well made point, thank you. Okay, so everyone's had a chance to speak now.
Sonny wanted to say something.
Sonny, did you have
I
point?
just wanted
Is it a new point?
Yeah, it's a new point, which tallies with everything else. I mean, reading through this strategy, I thought every strategy should have a section that talks about monitoring and control mechanism and so on, and I can't find anything like that. I know, try your best to put everything together. At the same time, I expect there should be a section where I'm consciously thinking about how we're going to monitor this, and if just taking, coming back to some of the good points that have just been made, if there are issues that arise, how you might be able to take those on board and deal with them. But that is not reflected in this strategy.
Sorry, with regards to reviewing the strategy, so to ensure that it's kept up to date.
Yeah, I thought it should be part of the whole, the whole exercise, in my opinion. You can't write a strategy of any kind without having a column that talks about how you're going to monitor and if anything comes up, how you're going to deal with it, contingencies and so on.
I know the strategy is a 5-year strategy, so obviously after those 5 years it does get reviewed, and I take your point that how do we ensure that we are doing that, and I think that's where the operational side sort of kicks in a bit more.
No,
because
I disagree. The right strategy, it should be consciously part of this document. A section should be there.
What I always just wanted to add is when it becomes operational, what happens is then it's when you get the data when it's operational, because you then see, is it being effective? Do you need to change things? Because, and I totally agree that what isn't clear is the things that we're definitely going to offer, and that's the bit I've picked up on, and that's the bit that you then get the data, you then get whether it's working well, you then get comments back from individuals about what's being offered to an individual, if it's worked, because what we want to do is ensure that the outcomes they wish to achieve are the things that we are delivering for them. And that's the bit that then comes out of the operational side, is the
I'm
outcome.
not talking about implementation, I'm talking about statement of intent. And that's where strategy is different from.
Anyway, what we can do is we will list all of these down, won't we? We'll write all of these points down. Because, obviously Simon's part of the whole department, he's not going to take them all. So we'll make sure you're armed with our points. Now, Kath, I'll give you the final comments.
Right, I've got a few things I'd like to just put into the mix. I'd like to make sure that everybody understands that autism is not an illness, or a mental illness, or a disability even. It is just people that are different. Okay? Yeah. They're not going to change. They're not going to get better with treatment. They're not going to get any worse. But they may become isolated. And they are vulnerable people. So we need to make sure that they're not treated as if they have something wrong with them. Do you get my drift?
I think everyone needs to be treated as an individual. So
yes.
Totally.
So they are not ill. Is my first point. On your recommended actions on lifelong care and support, the last point, ensure any autism strategies development group has representatives from housing, employment, criminal justice, education, social care, health, education. Representatives should demonstrate attendance. Parents are not there. Why not?
Which page is this, sorry?
Because that's the original one, so it's in section 4, lifelong care and support. So page 7, sorry.
Page 7.
The recommended actions, the last arrow, has all those people there but no parents.
Okay, so we'll add that. Any more points?
I just wanted to point out how I think we can judge whether this is doing us any good. On page 6, we learned that only 6 people in the lifelong care and support, second paragraph, only 6 people with autism without a learning disability are receiving services, which is absolutely appalling. And this leads to another statistic on page... Sorry, put the thing down. On page 20, which says 15% of adults with autism are in employment. 15%. Absolutely dire.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't rise to at least the same as other people with general disabilities, even though they haven't got disabilities as such, then we won't have done any good whatsoever with our strategy. So that, I think, will be very much the yardstick that we're using.
Okay.
I'd
like to thank everyone for their contributions today. In particular, Kath, this is really excellent stuff. I think you'll agree, Simon. You've got some real insight here. We've got some points, we're going to write them up for you, and hopefully, you know, when you come back in November, we'll recognise some of it in the strategy. I hope that's been a good session for you. I'm sorry that you had to come on your own, but we'll see you with your family, so to speak, next time. I think the main thing is, you know, we've got a committee stuffed full of experts here, and I think, you know, you can only use that to add value. I was going to go over all the points, but I think we're going to write them up. You know, we've got the stuff on the consultation, but taking it forward on education, we've made some points there, independent living, also, you know, the points about making it, you know, easier. I mean, quite often you can do, once you've got the strategy agreed, you can actually do different iterations for different audiences. And also, I think that killer point, or the final point, you know, maybe some excellent targets underpinning the really good work that you started here. But we'll see you in November. Exciting area of work, really. And, you know, I think I just wanted to add that I'm working with some other counsellors on education and employment. And one of the things we're looking at across the board, apprenticeships and how people don't fall through the gaps. So maybe we can, you know, another area that can add value to this strategy. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us, and you'll get our points. When will we write them all up?
I think about a week. I would have thought it was recent.
Is that all right?
Yes, that's
1
fine.
week. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Simon. See you again. Right.